when we introduce Hashem into our lives, things look different, and what happens to us is we live on a different level. So most of the time, if you're living with your own self, it can be very lonely and very challenging. The moment you let go and let the realization of Hashem in your life, things really go, you live in a whole different plane, things go differently. And it's quite an elevated form of living. What we're going to look at today is a technique that we haven't yet discussed, but a technique that elevates us. But I want to point out that we're not learning techniques, meaning this is not about like a technique of like to learn a trick. We don't learn tricks. This is not like self-help with tricks. What we're learning is real and true. That means it's not a technique how to get what you want. It's rather that when Hashem is in your life, things just happen, and they happen miraculously. So, right now, what's going on in the world, if anyone actually knows or cares, is there's a down in the market. And things are very challenging. So if you live in the world of, let's say, real estate, you know that it's challenging, that there's a lot of difficulties going on. And the la pashut, right? When you were making money before, and suddenly you're trying to make deals now, and you discover that you're working 18 hours a day, and you're trying to make your real estate deals, and it's just not working. And what last year or the year before happened in no time at all, now is not so simple at all. So what if a person decided before, you know what, I'm testing Hashem, and I'm giving tzedakah. I'm going to give charity, and I'm going to give so much, and then Hashem promises that He's going to make you rich. So you take upon yourself, I'm going to give $10 million, and then it worked, and you made tens of millions of dollars. You're like, wow. So the next year, you come back and you say, okay, this year I'm going to up the amount, 12 million instead of 10 million. That's nice. And then you're halfway through the year, and suddenly you're noticing that, there's no money this year. And you're like, but it says that if you give tzedakah, then it happens. And then you're like, but the market is down, and you're trying to make a deal and trying to make something else. And it's not working. What happens to a person when that goes about? You become deflated, discouraged, resentful. I gave the tzedakah. I could have used all that money for myself. Like, I gave away $10 million for tzedakah. That's a lot of money. If I wouldn't have given it away, I would have had that money for myself now, and then I would have been able to use it myself. So last year was a pretty dumb idea, and so you might feel even a little bit stupid for having done so. And a lot of difficult feeling that would enter a person now as they become a little anxious and paralyzed as you're going through what you're going through now. And so what we need is to learn a deeper meditation and a deeper way of introducing God into our lives to be able to get the money that we need now too, to be able to get what we need now as well. And let's take a look to this end at where it really was a very difficult moment in history, a moment where someone was in a struggle that I don't know most of us would even be able to handle. An intense and incredible and real struggle. It took place for King Chizkiyahu. King Chizkiyahu was the king of Yehuda. What's going on at that time is there's a powerful king in the world, king of Assyria, Ashur. His name is Sancheriv. Sancheriv was one of the most powerful kings ever, and probably a king who influences us up until this very day, in a sense, more than any other. Well, we could argue neck and neck with Nebuchadnezzar maybe, and Titus. But What Sancheiriv did was earth-shattering in two ways for us. Number one, he confused all the nations. So what he would do was he conquered all the nations of the world, and then he moved them around. So he put the Mitzrim in Ammon, and the Ammonites in Moab, and the Moabites in Bavel, and the Babylonians in Mitzrayim. And so when you go to Egypt, to Mitzrayim, the Egyptians are no longer Egyptians. And the Jordanians in Ammon are no longer the real deal Jordanians, they're someone else. That means that in the Torah, there's a halakha. You can't marry, for example, a Mitzri convert or an Ammoni convert until time passes by. Moavi, that's the whole story of Ruth. Nowadays, if someone comes to convert, how do you know? Maybe they're Moavi or Ammoni, or maybe worse, Amalek. And you say, well, your great-grandfather was, a Nazi, chas v'shalom. Are you able to convert? And the answer is yes. We don't know anyone who comes from where they come. We don't have a clue. And it's okay. We assume when you come from the majority, and therefore anyone can convert. Why is that? Because Bas Sancheiriv ubilbel et kol ha'umot. Sancheiriv confused all the nations. Sancheiriv confused us too. What he did was, he conquered the 10 tribes of Israel. So 10/12 of the Jewish people were decimated and lost forever. Nobody else succeeded in doing that. 10 tribes, gone. Where are they? On the other side of the Sambatyon. Good luck finding them. We don't know who they are. So there's 10/12 of the Jewish people somewhere out there, and they have been eradicated, essentially, for a whole history. That's pretty sad and intense. Now picture that, and Sancheiriv is now out to get Yerushalayim, the one final bastion of the Jewish people, and he's about to attack Yerushalayim. So he travels from Assyria, and his astrologers tell him that you must conquer Yerushalayim today, otherwise you can lose the battle. So he comes to Nov, and in Nov, he's, as Yeshayahu Navi says, Od hayom benov la'amod yenofef yado har bat Zion. He waves his hand in disdain at Yerushalayim. He looks at Yerushalayim and he says, that's Jerusalem? That's scrawny little nothing? He couldn't even understand why it was so much of an issue. Sancheiriv had 185,000 soldiers, and the Gemara says it wasn't soldiers, it was battalions, it was troops. Each one had, I don't know how many they had, but if each one had 10, that's 1.85 million soldiers. And he comes and he surrounds Yerushalayim. And his general, Rav Shakei, was a Jew, obviously, an apostate Jew. And he starts blaspheming the name of Hashem. And he scares the people, and they ask him, please don't talk in Hebrew, the people shouldn't understand. We can speak Assyrian. He says, no, I want to speak in Lashon HaKodesh, in Yehudit, so that everyone should understand and be afraid. He says, I'm ready to give you a gift of 2,000 horses, so you can fight me with these horses that I'll give you. As long as you can show me that you have 2,000 horsemen to ride the horses. And Yerushalayim couldn't produce that either. So King Chizkiyahu is in the midst of this. Now just try to imagine what pressure the king is under. Everyone else has capitulated. And so it's, hey, Chizkiyahu, give up. Surrender. Chizkiyahu goes over to the prophet Yeshayahu, and he says to him, Yeshayahu, his words are, Ki ba'u banim ad mashber v'koach ayin leleida. The children have come to a mashber. Mashber is a crisis, and there's no power to actually give birth. Mashber also means when a woman's about to give birth, it's a birthing stool, which is why it's a crisis. So he says the children have come to a crisis and a birthing stool, and they want to have a baby, and you can't have a baby. What does he mean by that analogy of a baby? What he means is we're stuck. We're feeling like a fetus that's stuck. And when it's stuck, I don't know what to do. If you go deeper into that analogy of being a fetus, let's look at the specifics of what it's like to be a fetus. A fetus in its mother's womb, what is it? The Gemara tells us, ultrasound. It says, Lema havla domeh bimei imo. What's a baby like? It's like a pinkas mekupal, a folded over booklet. He looks like that. Folded over. and his head is sunken between his knees. Ve'ikvotav al agbotav, his heels on his buttocks, and he eats what his mother eats, and he drinks what his mother drinks, and he has everything upside down. Because what's happening is he's eating from the umbilical cord, right? Yeah. And his air, oxygen, everything coming from there. And the real apparatus, which are the eyes, ears, nose, mouth. Well, he has ears and he can't hear. He has eyes and he can't see. He has a nose and he can't smell. He doesn't know what to do with everything that he has. And then what happens? Comes that glorious moment of childbirth. The Sham'i Lavlad de Tzaitz. When is the moment of birth? It's when you hear the baby, the Tzaitz, the cry of a baby. And that's the moment of childbirth. So we go from being a fetus to the moment of birth. What happens at birth? Well, what's closed is open and what's open is closed. Everything changes. You discover that the umbilical cord, that becomes absolutely useless. And you're wondering, what is the purpose of that? You have this belly button over there and it's just there. But suddenly those things on the head, the eyes, the ears, the nose, mouth, you get to see, wow, it's like amazing. You can see, you can hear, you can smell, you can taste. And then inside there's a brain. And that brain is actually designed to think. And it's designed to understand and appreciate depth and profundity. And there's a heart which can actually feel. And suddenly you become a human being. So, a fetus, is a fetus considered life? Are we pro-life or pro-choice? Guess what? Neither. Of course, killing a fetus is murder. But it's not the same murder as the murder of a live being. So it's not true to say that it's the same as a regular being. He's not. It's more like ubar yerech imoy. A fetus is considered a limb of his mother. So consider it like Khalila having to amputate. You don't take that lightly. But that's what it's like. It's a living being, but it's part of the mother. So if you have a question, mother or baby, mother wins. But once the baby comes out into the open and he utters that cry, at that point, the baby and the mother are on the same level. Now he's alive. So you see the difference. It's not somewhere in between pro-life and pro-choice. And so birth is when you become independent. And what happens at birth is absolutely transformational. Because what happens is that what was considered to be a moment ago real is now fake. And what was considered to be fake is now real. When the baby's born, suddenly there's a gasp. Because he senses around him this oxygen hits him. And it used to be so warm and beautiful inside. And now it's cold. And he gasps. And as he gasps at the cold air, so what happens is the air penetrates him. And suddenly the nose twitches. And the mouth, and the air comes in. And that's the beginning of a totally different reality. That's what happens at birth. It's a brand new reality that you never knew existed. So Chizkiyahu tells Yeshayahu, as recorded in Sefer Yeshayahu, he says, Ki ba'u banim ad mashber v'koach ayin leleida. We are the fetus. When you see a fetus, you understand, fetus baby. I've seen that. Know what that is? Yeah, that's a revelation of incredible divine intervention. He says, but what happens when you discover that you are now in a fetal stage and that you have the power to be born? So what does it mean? What am I missing now? So Chizkiyahu says this: my people around me are all perturbed. Some want to surrender and die. Some want to surrender and get taken over and then get exiled like everybody else. Some want to fight. Some are just depressed. All the people have different ways of relating to this impossible struggle. Can you imagine? When the market is down, what's the worst that can happen? You lose a bit of money and you won't be able to maintain your standard of living. Okay. Imagine the pressure you'd be under if you're surrounded by 185,000 battalions of soldiers all around you. You're in this little city and they've won and conquered everybody till now. What does he feel now?
Hopeless.
Absolutely helpless. Chizkiyahu says, what's happening is I'm feeling energies and they're penetrating me from the outside. All over. The outside is very much dictating how I feel. I feel like I'm being dominated and controlled by anything else outside. And I don't feel right now my power coming as Zri Me'im Hashem. I don't feel the power coming from Hashem. But I know that only Hashem can help me. So you know how when you wake up in the morning and you're just like, oh, well, wake up, let's go have a day. And you take it for granted. You woke up. Waking up is a miracle. It's unbelievable. You just woke up and suddenly you're up. It's incredible. And sometimes you notice absolute miracles in your life and you notice incredible things that go on and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And you see Hashem's presence right there. The trick is when you don't see and you're feeling a terrible, terrible struggle. How do you flip that when you've got all the pressure at you and all your people have succumbed to that pressure? So Sancheriv's spell has successfully penetrated them too. They're feeling anxious because of him and because of Rav Shakeh and because of the feelings outside. And Chizkiyahu says this is the moment. A Jew doesn't allow the outside to dictate to him how he feels. A Jew is in Hashem's presence. You're always in Hashem's presence because Meloch Chol Haaretz Kvodo, he's everywhere. So you can't get away from him. So you're like a fetus inside mommy's womb. We're always in Hashem's warm embrace. But sometimes we don't get it. And so what we need is, well, like a birth. We need to be born. What does it mean to be born? To realize that these little things we have, the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth, are real. So we all have these forces inside of us. We're taught and we know that we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And we know that Hashem is here, there, everywhere, right? Because we were taught that as a song. And we got that part. And we know that we have Shabbos, so we just like walk into Hashem's control. And it's like this moment of Kol Melachtecha Asuya, there's nothing what to do. And we get how there's Torah, and the Torah is Hashem's blueprint for creation, and so it's the real deal of creation. But what happens is we're not able to internalize that which is known to us. It's known, but it's not being utilized. That's called being a fetus. The truth is crystal clear, but it's not something we can use. And so we get stuck. So Chizkiyahu says, we're at this mashber, the crisis, the moment of birth. These moments of real struggle, what are they designed for? They're designed for you to flip the switch and find Hashem's presence. So what does Chizkiyahu do? He says, as the Gemara puts it, Ani yashen al mitati. I'm not going to daven. I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm going to sleep. You ever go to sleep at night? When there's no worries that day? Sometimes you have like just a good day and everything's fine. You know, there's rare occasions. But everything's fine. And you just go to sleep. And it's a great sleep like a baby. It's wonderful. No issues, no problems. Try do that and you're surrounded by 185,000 battalions who are about to destroy you in the morning. What would your heart be palpitating all night long? Chizkiyahu's like, nah. He says, well, look, There's such a thing called ishtadlut. Sometimes you got to do things, right? So he's like, well, let's think what I can do right now. I haven't even got 2,000 men to fight against him. I have no, what should I do? Shoot bow and arrow? What should I do? There is nothing to do over here. So that realization there's nothing what to do is what spurs him on. He's like, oh, so this is the moment where Hashem says, rely on me, absolute reliance. Bitachon doesn't mean that you say you have bitachon. That's too easy. You can say, yeah, think it's going to be good, think good. It's to feel it. And that's Chizkiyahu's incredible, unbelievable realization. And how that's work. Oh my gosh, that must be the hardest work ever. Imagine. He had not 1 ounce of a worry when he went to sleep. His heart, perfectly aligned with Hashem. Want to try to see how we can do that too? We don't have the level of stress he's got. But what do we need to do to try work that into our lives also, that when you're stressed, you're able to control yourself? So, in general, galut, exile, is called pregnancy, ibur. And geula is known as a childbirth. That's why on Tisha B'Av we say, Eli Tzion ve'aria kemo isha betzireha. Cry like a woman who's in the pangs of birth. Because Mashiach is called chevlei leida. It's the pangs of birth. So why is it called birth? Well, because a moment ago you were stuck. That's the fetus. And that's when you're born. What's birth? Birth is when Mashiach comes, we'll look back and we'll say, wow. Because we're not going somewhere else. We're going to be right where we are, noticing Hashem's presence right here, right in this moment. And so you'll look around and you'll suddenly see, wow, I didn't get this. I understood the whole time that life was about me working and making money and, trying my best to raise children and to have success in everything I'm doing and ups and downs and everything. And then I'm also going to do Torah and mitzvahs so that I can get, some paradise in the world to come and have all that, and it's nice, and etc., etc. I didn't get that you could use the Torah mitzvahs, that you like, that when you have Torah mitzvahs, you just fall into a state and everything just works. You don't need to do anything else. It's just like technical stuff to do, which Hashem wants you to do. I didn't get just how unreal it is, that if you keep Shabbos, and you really keep Shabbos, and kol melachtecha asiyah, you feel like Hashem, all my work is done, then it is done. Then you don't need to do anything. That when you allow Hashem into your life, miracles happen around you. I didn't notice that I'm actually a miracle maker. And so that's the moment of birth, like, whoa, did you notice that? It's unbelievable. When Mashiach comes, we get it. But our avoida, our work, is not to wait for that moment when it happens. What we're supposed to do is bring Mashiach. See, like, what am I supposed to do? How do I bring Mashiach? Hashem does. I don't bring Mashiach. What am I supposed to do? Well, the answer is, bring yourself to the state of childbirth, as difficult as it is each time. And you want to reveal that and allow this to happen within you. So let's take a look at the first redemption that we have. The first redemption we had was, we were in Mitzrayim. We were in Egypt. And what happens is, we want to get out of Egypt. So, Hashem appears to Moshe, and he says, okay, let's get them out. And then Moshe tries to get them out, and everything goes wonderful, but then Paro makes an about face. And he says, let's make things worse than ever. The worst time in the exile of Mitzrayim was after Moshe came. That's when they weren't given the straw to make, and so more babies were murdered and more suffering and more struggle than ever before. And at that time, Moshe comes to Hashem and he says, can't do this. Lama hareyota lama ze shtachtani. Why'd you do this? Why'd you send me? Please, Hashem, it's not right. It's not. I can't take this. That moment is when Hashem says, Moshe, understand this now. We're about to experience a birth. He says, I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They didn't get to see what Hashem was for real, though. You're about to experience it for real. I appeared is past tense. I appear is current tense. It's a constant. It's what's happening to us now. What's happening is, as you go to change from one way of looking at things to a totally new way of looking at things, and that's called childbirth. In Mitzrayim, they needed to have a birth. What's a birth look like in Mitzrayim? Imagine you're still in a state of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim being constraints and limitations and challenges and difficulties. That's Mitzrayim. So imagine there's a struggle going on in your life. How do you get out of that struggle? The way to escape the struggle, as we've learned before, is called Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Which means there's three things you got to do. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So they're our forefathers, but they're Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are things we're supposed to do with ourselves now. It's an avoida. It's the work that we do now. Right? So whenever you have a struggle, the way to switch from being in a fetal stage to being born, like Chizkiyahu does, is Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. What does that mean? Three things you got to do. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, love, awe, and compassion. Step one is you got to get to a relationship with Hashem. You have to fall in love. Like we discussed before, the doves looking at each other and gazing at each other. You have to build a relationship with Hashem. So, if you want to build a marriage, you have to date and work and get to know each other and build a connection. It's no different, and it's much more intense in our relationship with Hashem, which is why Shlomo HaMelech in Shir HaShirim compares the love between a Jew and God to the love of a man and a woman. And you have to work your way to connect. So how do you connect? Well, Hashem is everywhere and in everything, but you don't see anything. So the work is to gaze at Him and to see Him and to work hard to find Hashem. How do you find Hashem? We have what's called Shachris in the morning. What's Shacharit? Shacharit is take some time, sit down, and just think about how Hashem is running everything, and how Hashem is behind everything, and how He is everything. And you get to a state where you can say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Close your eyes and you say, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's, ever see a baby born? What do you think that is? It's amazing when parents think like, that's my kid. What makes him your kid, other than that he happened to have been channeled through you? It's not your kid. There's a third partner. You don't know how to make kids. And they come out perfect with eyes, ears, nose, and a mouth and everything. It's unbelievable. It's Hashem's child, who happened to have been given to you as a partner with Hashem. It's coming straight from Hashem. Notice that. Notice when you wake up in the morning and you make the brachot, and everything you do, just notice this is from Hashem, that's from Hashem, that's from Hashem, that's from Hashem. Every single thing that happens, you just notice. Hashem is just in everything. It's unreal. And when you smell and you see and you feel and you breathe and everything you do, you notice in it Hashem. That's the work of Avraham. That's Avraham made Shacharit. It's about feeling Hashem's presence and noticing it and paying attention. And you spend some time in the morning working that so that you can do a Yitzchak when it happens. Yitzchak's in the middle of the day, Mincha. And what does that mean? Yitzchak is Gvura, Pachad, the fear. What is that? When you fall into the state of worry and something happens and you're lost and you're feeling like, uh-oh, I'm scared. Now you're like, okay. Ouch, the market is going down. I'm very, very scared. It's nothing wrong. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to admit your real feeling. I'm feeling a challenging feeling. I'm grieving. I'm stuck. And that's okay. Because through being stuck, you can transform that into a connection to God. When you admit and you capture your feeling and you really identify what's going on inside you, you know what happens then? Problem goes away. It only festers when you refuse to admit that it's there. The second you're in touch, okay, I'm feeling very jealous. Okay. Now what? Nothing, it just goes away. It's amazing. Because the problem only works when you don't identify it. And then he's got this life of his own. The second you're like, yep, that's what I'm feeling. Abraham and Yitzchak are two modalities of living. Abraham is a love for Hashem, feeling Hashem in everything. Yitzchak is feeling Hashem when you don't. The awe, working from down up when you don't. And then you throw in the third attribute, which is Yaakov. Yaakov is stop looking at yourself as a separate being from Hashem. You carry God inside you. You have a neshama, you have a chelek elokam ma'al mamash inside you. And so you always say to yourself, have compassion for the divine powers inside you. So for example, if you do something wrong, you do something terrible, and you did a real chas v'chalila and aveira, and you say, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. No, you're not. There's a princess inside you. Hashem, he has his neshama inside you. And the princess is stuck. So just help her get out. Have compassion over Hashem. It's three attributes that we need to reveal from ourselves in order to survive and get through anything in life. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Shachris min Chamayev. It's to see Hashem. Most people don't see God. Jews have a special power. What's our power? We say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's our power. That's Avraham. And we work hard to see Hashem in everything. So then, when it actually happens, when something transpires in life, you say, no, it's not what you see. I'm feeling anxious about this, but it's Hashem. That's what Chizkiyahu was doing. He was in a state of absolute helplessness, more than any of us could ever imagine. He's a very strong individual. Most of us would at that point be like, okay, I don't know what I learned there, but I'm out. This ain't working. I'm just falling into a state of depression and surrender, and I'm finished. Chizkiyahu was just very intense. He was very good. He was developed in his emunah. So when all fails, what does he do? Nothing I can do. So if nothing I can do, I'm drawing out these powers. That's the childbirth. Most of us have emunah in the back of our minds. He brought it right to the forefront. That's what he did. He's like, okay, bitachon, absolute trust in Hashem. So he felt every feeling that they were giving him, but he saw God, Avraham and Yitzchak. And then he says, Yaakov, I've got compassion inside me. I've got a soul. I've got a neshama. I'm strong. I'm powerful. And when you notice that, everything changes. It's fascinating. I saw a letter of the Lubavitcher Rebbe where he writes, the previous Rebbe actually, he writes to someone who was trying to have, they were trying to learn a whole entire Masechta, a whole tractate. You ever learned a whole tractate? It's like Masechta Gittin. Is 90 daf. It's so much. Yeah, it's like a ton of work to remember and to do and to whatever. It's a lot of stuff. He says, if you want to be able to memorize it, I'll give you the key to memorization. You know what the key is? Believe that you can do it. That's the key. If you say I can't, then you can't. If you say, yeah, of course I can do it, then it's hard work, but I'm going to do it. It's the belief that you can do it. Then you do it. Simple. Chizkiyahu was like, okay, I'm going to put this at the forefront, and Hashem's going to make me miracles. And I'm totally fine. I'm in Hashem's hands. It's all good. Like, he doesn't worry. I don't know what Hashem's going to do, but I know that I'm with him, so whatever happens is fine, and it's good, and then it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a real good. That's called working Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov into our lives. It's constant avoida, hard, difficult, challenging work to feel Hashem's presence all the time and to be in his space everywhere, everything. And then you have a childbirth. What happens after a baby's born? Amazing miracle. Unbelievable how miracles happen. So the baby gets born, and then now the baby needs to eat. Suddenly, mommy has milk. It's amazing. Where'd that happen from? And milk comes out, and the baby's got what to drink. What does that mean to us? How do you make milk? Where does mommy's milk come from? You know what it really is? It's blood. Yeah. Dam ne'ekar v'nasa chalav. Hashem makes the miracle, and the blood of the mother actually becomes milk. Incredible.
They say once a woman starts menstruating after she gave birth, like after 6 months or 7, whatever it is, she should really stop nursing because the milk is not as good anymore.
Wow. Oh. Mm-hmm. What that means is, in our avodah, in our analogy of seeing that geula, right? The geula is childbirth, and geula can happen is Mashiach, and it's the things that we live with now, which is when you lived in an elevated state of life, a redeemed state of life. You get a gift. The gift is called a flow of milk. What is milk in this case? So, in Tehillim it says, Ki'ish asher imo tenachamenu. Tehillim? No. That's not Tehillim. Ki'ish asher imo tenachamenu, ken anochi anachimchem. A baby gets comforted, a man gets comforted by his mother. Not just a baby. When you're older, mommy is what comforts you. Nothing like a mother. Kein anochi anachimchem. Hashem says, I'm going to comfort you the same way. I'm going to be your mother. And what does that mean? It's a power that we accrue from Hashem. It's downloading a power from Hashem. The same way as a mother gives milk, once you start noticing through your work of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you start noticing Hashem's power everywhere. What you notice is that you become in a state of simcha, of happiness. Things start flowing. Just like a baby, the mother, it's like a connection that you build. The experience of nursing is not just, it's a connection. And the child develops through nursing from the mother. So a person, a human being, develops in the relationship with Hashem. And what we have is an incredible gift called simcha. What happens is, when you start noticing God in everything, you know what happens? You start living a happy life. People who are always tense and worried and stressed, as most of us are nowadays, where does it come from? Detachment theory. It's when you're disconnected from God. And how do you get to be happy? Oh, it ain't easy. It's so hard. It's so difficult to be happy. It's like amazing. It's unbelievable. Why is it so difficult to be happy? Babies are happy. Once we grow older, we're getting everything we live from outside forces, so we're not able to find an inner happiness inside of us. It's so sad not to be happy. Happiness is something human beings automatically have. How do you develop that happiness? When you start seeing Hashem's presence in everything, then the blood turns into milk. What's blood? Bloody things. It's when there's hard challenges around there. That's the blood. The blood is the things that flow around and happen. It circulates all over, and it's harsh. You can't eat or you can't drink blood. You're not allowed to either. The blood is a negative. We associate blood with negative feelings, right?
Blood is life.
But blood is life. Blood can be made into milk. When you're flowing through life, there's events that are circulating all around you. There's things that are happening all around you. That's the circulation of life. If you don't make it into milk, you'll experience blood, and it won't be a good experience.
So how do you explain when Chizkiyahu says, "B'damai chayi, b'damai chayi"? I mean, we know the Midrash.
When we're going to transform, well, there's a benefit to blood too. We don't want all the blood to become milk. We want to have blood. But when you want to eat it and allow it to sustain you, you're not allowed to eat blood. But when Hashem makes the blood into milk, that you could eat. That's the blood we're talking about. So blood experiences are the negative way of looking at things. And it feels so harsh, it feels so difficult when something happens to you. So when Chizkiyahu is challenged and all the armies are around him and he feels so, it's like, Hashem, come on, I served you all my life. And this is how you reward me? Like this? And so, And Hashem says, this is a moment of childbirth. I was reading an amazing article by an incredible person. It's online, I can tell you afterwards what it is. But it's a mother who, she had a baby born. And the baby couldn't breathe. And she describes how baby couldn't breathe. So the baby gets whisked away right away, and she wasn't able to basically hug her baby for months. She describes this horror of 5 months of going through all this pain and suffering. And she's like, every day she's taking the train, because there's a bunch of kids at home, taking the train up and down, and coming in there. And taking the train to get to the hospital, and it's like, there's a despondency. Till she starts realizing that the hospital, well, they put the baby, she writes in this article, they put the baby in solitary confinement because the baby had some kind of infection and they were worried about it. And she fought for the baby because like the baby can't be by himself. He needs people. And she won. And then she says there came a moment they wanted to put a trach into the baby. And she's fighting it, she says it's not the right thing to do. And after a while, they were like, we're calling the ACS on you. And we are going to, they gave her a very rough time. And she's like, there comes a point, and I realize, I'm on the train, a harsh train ride. As I'm riding there, I realize that I'm really not in control of the situation at all. Much as I want to be in control, I think I'm in control, and I'm trying my best. It's like I realize that I'm totally not in control. It's not me at all. What she says is as soon as like this feeling of helplessness like overcame me, and then the feeling of helplessness was replaced by, if it's not me, it's not the doctors either. It's Hashem. Hashem is doing this, and it's Hashem's hands. And as soon as she was like able to feel that okay, this is absolutely Hashem, like everything changed automatically. And she writes exquisite. She says, suddenly I felt totally Hashem's presence right there. Beautiful article she wrote on Chabad.org. And I felt, she writes a letter to her baby, basically, when the baby turned 4. And she says, as soon as I felt that, suddenly I got a power and a voice inside of me. And what happened was, the baby, Baruch Hashem, made it, and everything good and healthy and well. And the trach came out and took a long time, but thank God, baby's amazing. She says, well, as a result of that, I realized that I got a voice. Until then, I didn't realize how much power I had. The day I became helpless and ceded control, and then gave the control over to Hashem, what happened that day? Suddenly, I became very powerful. And she opened up a business, and she started to be very, very, very successful. And the success came from not having known before what powers I have. She's like, I don't want to go through that. But what happened through what I went through is I discovered a totally new way of thinking. That's an inkling of what childbirth looks like in our work, in our avodah. And that's what Chizkiyahu did. He felt this absolute connection to God, and that's when the miracle comes about. And so he couldn't have dreamt that the best day of his life was that day. What was a moment ago the worst possible time became the best, unbelievable, most incredible miracle, which we recount to this very day. On Pesach night, the songs at the end of the Haggadah, they are all about, many of them, about that moment. B'chatzi halayla, where Sancheiriv was wiped out, this whole army. It's unbelievable that the miracle that happened. Where did it come about? Because one Jew let Hashem into his life. And he discovered an unbelievable reality. So that sounds good, right? It's some work for us to do. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Every time something happens, you realize, you start noticing Hashem all the time, and you realize that in real time when something comes about, and you work it, and you feel how you're a neshama going through life, and it's not about me, it's about Hashem, and suddenly I have accrued divine powers. And what that does is it causes me to be born, to see things in a new light, and when you see things in a new light, your face starts shining, and you become a happy person. You can walk through any situation, and suddenly you have a magic wand, because everything changes. All the blood changes into milk, and it starts flowing, and you become in a state of simcha, a state of happiness. And then you start seeing unbelievable miracles. And Hashem says to Moshe, he says, okay, now we can begin what we want to talk about. He says, וארא אל אברהם אל יצחק ואל יעקב בקהיל shakai. The word shakai is also spelt shin dalad and yud. When a woman gives birth, when a woman produces milk, it comes from the shadayim. Right? It's breast milk. So he says, to them I appeared and I showed them the breast milk. Mikhail of Shin Dalad and Yud. It's the name of Hashem, but it means also the breast milk. So I gave them that. And now, Moshe, to you, want to know why the Golus is so hard and so difficult? I'm not telling you why. I'm telling you what. Shmi Yud Kei Vav Kei Lo Nodati Laim. There was something they were missing, and that's the new technique I want to give you. No tricks, no techniques. It's the new reality I want to give you when I'm giving you the Torah. And what is that? What happens is, when you start getting into this mode of living and you start being born and you start seeing things, and you have these unbelievable experiences, little Chizkiyahu moments, and you suddenly start feeding Hashem and you see, wow, it's amazing, it's miraculous. Imagine the market is down. And you made up before that you're going to give a ton of tzedakah. And then what happens is, year 1 it works, year 2 it works, and you increase year 3, and then year 4, the market tanks. What happens to you now? You start resenting why you gave tzedakah, and you start worrying, and you start feeling anxious, right? And what does Hashem say? He says, just 1 second, let's go back. When something amazing happens, and unbelievable happens, how do you feel? What would you say is the feeling when you see miracles in your life? You feel? Euphoric. Euphoria. An unbelievable simcha. Is that good or bad? It's excellent, right? It's like, wow, gratitude to Hashem. It feels like it's unbelievable. It's gratefulness to Hashem. Here's a little bit of a radical thought. Euphoria is a drug. It's not good. When you see and you notice Hashem's presence in these unbelievable moments, and you start jumping for joy, and you're like, I can't believe what Hashem just did for me. It's unbelievable. And you start seeing those miracles, that is a drug. Don't take drugs.
It has a dopamine.
Has a dopamine high. And what it does to you is, it causes you to need it again. And then when it doesn't happen again, you're like, oh boy. So when the market is up and you gave it stock and you see, wow, look at Hashem's presence, it's unbelievable, you feel great. Ooh, hold on. The story is, a Jew once came to the Baal HaTanya, and he says, Rebbe, I don't know what to tell you. I was a very successful man. I was so wealthy. I was doing so unbelievably well. And all I could think about was how to give more tzedakah. And so I started to give, and people are relying on me for their tzedakah. They need me for the tzedakah. And then, market took a turn to the worse, and I lost everything. I don't have any money now, and I'm stuck. What should I do? And he says, Rebbe, I just want you to know, I don't care about me. It's fine. If Hashem wants me to lose the money, I'm good. I don't need it. It's okay. But I have people who are relying on me. There's 2 brides in town who are about to make their weddings, and they're relying on me to pay them. I took money from people, there were no banks in those days. They deposited money by me, and I lost everything in a fire. I have no money to pay them back with. I don't have to pay them back because the place burned down. It's not my fault. But I just feel terrible that it's because of me they lost money. And all the tzedakah that I was giving. He says, Rabbi, all I'm asking for is a blessing from Hashem that I should be able to give the tzedakah that I promised, and that's it. Sounds holy, right? Sounds amazing. What a Jew. The Baal HaTanya goes into a moment of thought. And he looks at the Jew, And he says to him, there's two versions of the story. He says, Du sorgst als was du darfst, aber zu lieb was darf man dir, wegen dem sorgst du gar nicht. You're worrying everything what you need. But what you need it for, you're not worrying about at all. Or the other version is not du sorgst, but du sorgst. You're saying everything what you need, but you're not saying what you need it for. Sounds a little bit like someone who came a little later and said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It's not the same as that at all. He says, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask not what you can do for your country. Ask what your country needs done that you can do. That's what the Baal HaTanya is telling him. You see the difference? Ask what you can do for your country is also your own ego. You want to be the one who gave the tzedakah. You want to be the one who helped. It's like, why don't you ask what Hashem needs? And then say, how can I help without Hashem? That's his message. See, what happens to us is we get addicted to the euphoria of, I gave the tzedakah. And it's amazing. Look at this happen, that happened. And then you become addicted to the dopamine high that comes from it. Addictions are all no good. It's not gratitude that. You know what gratitude's like? It's like water. What does water taste like? Nothing. It's just water. There's no taste to it. It's just life. What you want to get into a realization is Hashem is with you all the time. So you breathe, you eat. You can expect miracles too. If you get into a space with Hashem, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you know what you'll see? You'll notice Hashem in everything. You'll be like, sure, Hashem makes miracles all the time. Of course. And I'm absolutely grateful to Hashem. And I'm feeling Hashem's presence all the time. I'm not sitting over there going, wow, I saw Hashem. You want to do that? No problem. Wake up in the morning and do that. When you open up your eyes in the morning, go, wow, I opened up my eyes. That's a great place of euphoria. Don't, like, if you expect, but why don't you do that when you wake up in the morning? Because it's just waking up, that's all I do. We do that. It's getting into a state of being one with Hashem all the time. That's what Hashem tells Moshe. He says, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov didn't know me. That was only childbirth and breast milk. Now we're going to talk about becoming an adult. Moshe had a new quality. It's called V'nachnu ma. Moshe says, V'nachnu ma. What's V'nachnu ma? We are what? Me and Aaron, he says, we're nothing. We don't exist. Moshe Rabbeinu was a channel and a conduit for the Shekhinah. He went up there, talked to God, brought the Torah down, brought the word of Hashem down. The whole Torah is, what's the most famous verse in the whole Torah? Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemo. And not the most famous verse, the most oft-quoted verse, sorry. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemo. What does that mean? That Hashem spoke through Moshe. There was no Moshe. You are a Moshe inside you. Torah tziva lanu, Moshe. You have a Moshe inside you. What's that Moshe? You're divine. Your whole life is divine. And Hashem put his neshama, his soul, inside you. And he became one with you. And so he's being manifest through you. So step one is to stop getting afraid and worried and everything that happens out there in life, and to work on your bitachon, and to work through Avraham, seeing Hashem in everything. Work through Yitzchak. When things go wrong, when things are not the way you want it to be, start noticing Hashem. Get excited about seeing Hashem. Yes, you need to get excited. Then you go through Yaakov, you realize how I'm just a walking divine neshama. And then you start becoming happy. Because after you're born, mommy gets milk, and you start seeing happiness in everything. And then we grow a little bit older. And we grow and become new, real people, adults. What's an adult? Where you realize that the euphoria, which you had, it's good to have euphoria. It's great. And then grow a little older and realize that Hashem is always with you. You know why rich people become richer and poor people become poorer? The poor get poor and the rich get richer. You know why? Because the poor expect to get poor and the rich expect to get rich. It's very simple. If you live with an expectation that, what do you mean? Of course, I'm making money, I'm a rich man, so then you do it. But if you live with, I'm expecting to get this year $8,000 of it, that's what you'll get. It just works that way because it's a mindset that you have. A Jew lives in a mindset that I'm with Hashem. What's the question? Every time I'm with Hashem. And so something happens wrong, I feel the pain, and I go right back to being one with Hashem. What's about the future? The market's down? Okay. So the market's down, so what? You feeling anxiety? Okay, get right back to space with Hashem. I'm expecting it to go good. You want to make $25 million this year? Expect it. What does it mean expect it? It means live with the reality that you'll have it, and it just comes. You got to decide if you want to live with that reality. But if you live in that reality and you go do things in that vein and that thing, then it just happens. And if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. Then it happens. Because I'm like, I need it to happen, then it doesn't happen. A Jew gets into a space where it's hard work. You can't go straight to the stage. You got to go through Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. You got to work your way up. And after you work your way up, you get to a space where you start realizing Hashem is with you all the time in everything, and it's a staple of life. It's just like water. That's your Moshe. Your Moshe is when you stop getting addicted to euphoria and you start realizing God is just with you all the time. Simple, straight. And there's nothing what to worry about, nothing what to be afraid of. And then you make miracles and you're like, okay, what do you want? Hashem made me breathe, made the sunshine. Hashem's amazing. You feel gratitude all the time. It's a mellow gratitude. Yeah. It's not a euphoria. And then you start seeing more and more and more of that, right? You notice how a poor man goes to a restaurant, they say, eat all you want, what does he do? He walks out fresszing everything he could. A rich man, you say, eat all you want, what does he do? Takes a bite, takes a whatever. Doesn't mean eat all you want. I mean, you're a human being. That's what it's like living in Hashem's world as a rich man, a rich Jew. Hashem is in everything all the time. And when you get to live that and you're not worried and afraid and petrified and you start working it, it's such hard work this. Because the child has to be born in your avodah and the milk is to come, the simcha, through you. And then you get to a state of Hashem says, Ushmi Hashem lo nodati lahem. And now I'm going to tell you, Moshe, who I am. This is who I am. Everything is me and I'm everything and I'm one with you. That's the place we're going. That's Matan Torah, ultimately, and that's Geula. We don't get it fully until the Mashiach comes. So it's like, not that it's happening, but we can make it happen slowly but surely by just relaxing. It's the easiest thing to do, it's relaxing. But it's so hard to relax that you're in Hashem's presence. But that's the work. Hashem is with you in everything.